One American News is well known as one of the most far-right channels on television. Along with Newsmax, these channels pander to, of course, the hard-right MAGA chud demographic that spread conspiracy theories about COVID-19 and are unabashedly pro-Trump. Even when Donald Trump would contradict himself, they would still find a defense. I'm pretty sure they were also the ones that would defend him over tweeting Covfefe, which meant nothing, but they were like, no. It actually meant something. It's secret code, and libs don't understand the secret code. Right. Sure. Now, according to first the Daily Beast, One American News spends much of its airtime peddling dangerous conspiracy theories, for example, Pizzagate, the Seth Rich murders, as well as Islamophobia, transphobia, foreign propaganda, while platforming literal white nationalists like Jack Posobiec. So now it's not a surprise this kind of content doesn't really appeal to most Americans, most regular people, because most regular people are not insane. It really only appeals to just the most hardcore right-wingers. And so the real surprise, actually, is who makes this network, who gets arguably way less viewers than even some left-wing Twitch streamers, and makes very little advertising revenue, is still able to actually stay on the air. How? Well, it turns out it's got some daddy funding, daddy AT&T. So now a Reuters review of court reviews shows that the role AT&T not only played in creating OAN, but it plays in funding it as well. So now, back in 2013, AT&T executives said, you know what we need? You know what cable TV needs? More conservative programming. So now they have Fox News, but in Fox News, literal propaganda outlet of the Republican Party. And AT&T says, no, you know, we need more. We need more hardcore right-wing conservative media. Yeah, that's what we need. So now they found Chief Executive Robert Herring Sr. So now he testified in court, and some of those documents have been unsealed. That's where a lot of the Reuters investigation comes from. And here's a quote during a 2019 deposition. Quote, they told us they wanted a conservative network. They only had one, which was Fox News, and they had 7 others on the other left-wing side. When they said that, I jumped to it and built one. So let me just start with the absurdity of that. Oh my God, all cable news, except for Fox News, is left-wing. You're going to sit here and tell me that CNN is left-wing. What? You're going to tell me that CNBC is left-wing? Yeah, MSNBC is liberal establishment. Okay. So I guess, you know, you could say it's center-left, perhaps. Then, of course, when you look at the Overton window and everything is so far shifted to the right, even mainstream liberals actually are European conservatives. And so, you know, that gets into a different conversation of, like, how far to the right America is compared to the rest of the world. And so, but I'm just going to look at it in the context, of course, of American politics, when people who are saying, hey, you know what we should do? We should actually have universal health care. Or not have, prescription drugs cost 10 times what their, what it costs to manufacture them. Or at least, what was it? The recent Intercept report came out and said there's a new COVID-19 treatment that is being charged, they're charging 40 times more than what it costs to create. When people want affordable drugs, that is considered to be left-wing. That's how insane our country is at this point. And so it's crazy to say, no, we don't have any. We only have one conservative network, and that's Fox News, and we need another one. No, we don't. Especially when you look at right-wing radio, when you look at Sinclair Broadcasting, which has bought up a lot of the smaller, small local channels and turned them into literal propaganda factories. for the right wing. Total insanity that we have. Total insanity. So now, again, if you're not a member of the far right, or I should say, no, if you're so far to the right wing that facts no longer matter, then you'll obviously be like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, CNN, total left wing, yeah, everything's left wing. Now the truth is, outside of independent media, there is no left wing media. There is right wing media, there is establishment media, and that's it. Even here in this, here in America, our progressive media generally is center left. Mostly sock Dems, social democrats. So look, a lot of independent YouTubers, for example, or Twitch streamers, myself, Humanist Report, Tim Black, TYT, etc., are mostly center left. There are very few communists and socialists. Very few people who are full Marxists that actually have a large presence on these platforms, on media. So to say that any media in this country that is really left-wing is a total lie. Total lie. It's so strange. I could not imagine the reaction to CNN if they were to actually interview a literal communist. They would shit themselves. So now, anyway, back to AT&T. So they create this network that is, super conservative, right? So now, right now, conservative basically means a platform for 4chan-inspired conspiracy theories. And so now the problem with that, well, and there are many problems with that, but they ran into one big one, and it's that no advertisers wanted to pay for a channel that does nothing but nonsense, unhinged conspiracies. And so it turns out that as a result, court records show that 90% of OAN's revenue actually comes from a contract with AT&T owned television platforms, including satellite broadcaster DirecTV, according to 2020 sworn testimony by OAN accountants. That is tens of millions of dollars in revenue. And so OAN is nothing but AstroTurf Media. Now, Herring has also testified that he was offered $250 million for OAN in 2019 and said that without the DirecTV deal, the accountant said under oath that the network's value, and get this is hilarious, without that deal, the network would be worth nothing. Zero. Amazing. Amazing. The value would be zero. Not enough people watch it to sustain it. Or at least not enough advertisers are all interested in supporting this channel because of how insane right-wing that they are. Now, AT&T says, oh, no, we never had a financial interest in OAN's success. We do not fund OAN. We just have a couple of deals with them, that's all. Really? State and federal court documents reviewed by Reuters actually detail a very, lucrative relationship for both OAN and AT&T, involving, of course, OAN pitching DirecTV and being incredibly kind towards AT&T products on its own channel. Hey, we fund your network, and guess what? You're going to, in return, give us positive coverage. Interesting. Very interesting. So now, the records include a reported offer by AT&T to require a roughly 5% equity stake in OAN and AWE. Though the two sides ultimately signed a different deal, the court filings also cite a promise by OAN to cast a positive light on AT&T during their newscasts. The confidential OAN financial records are drawn in part from testimony, including by Herring and then the accountant, generated during the labor lawsuit brought against OAN by a former employee and unrelated to AT&T. This all came out, that's how this came out. When that case went to trial, the network's lawyer told the jury that it was AT&T that was keeping OAN afloat. This is even more disturbing when you realize that, of course, OAN panders to people that supported the big lie conspiracy, that Donald Trump won the election, that Joe Biden had lost. In fact, the network's online audience had soared in November after Fox News affirmed Joe Biden's victory, which, of course, angered Trump. Trump then went and tweeted about, when he had a Twitter account, about how Fox News, very bad, very unfair coverage. You should go to OAN. They do real news. They don't do fake news. And that's what happened. A record of 767,000 people had installed the OAN app that month, 9 times as many as in October, according to data firm Sensor Tower. The next month, Trump supporters, including at least one carrying an OAN flag, stormed the Capitol. And of course, that same month, installs of the app spiked to 517,000. So OAN is a literal pro-insurrection network. And their reporting has led to actual violence and threats of violence. In fact, in August, Sheila Garcia of Riverside County, California, had sent Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold a message accusing her of treason. She is one of the state's top election officials, warning her that punishments for that crime are hanging and lethal injection. Quote, within several months, you will have to decide between the two. Now, if that's not a threat, I don't know what is. And of course, it was designed to be intimidation in order to fudge the results of that election to give the states over to Donald Trump, whom they believe is the rightful winner of the election. Now, Garcia said to Reuters that she's convinced that Biden stole the election and said she gets most of her news from OAN. Well, of course, that's why. And compared U.S. mainstream media to state propaganda outlets in China and Cuba. Funny how their viewers think that everything else is propaganda when they literally are doing propaganda themselves. One example of it is on January 6th, after Trump supporters broke into the Capitol, an OAN news director had cautioned the staff via an email, quote, please do not say Trump supporters stormed Capitol. Simply call them demonstrators or protesters. Do not call it a riot. From the top brass. The following day, Herring floated the narrative that it was not Trump supporters, but instead was Antifa. We want to report all the things that Antifa did yesterday from a report on January 7th. I don't think it was Trump people, but let's investigate. He emailed OAN producers. Now, the FBI says there was no evidence of Antifa in the riot. And of course, the FBI, not really well known as a liberal organization or supportive of liberal causes, yet even they are like, we just don't have any evidence. As much as we would like to say Antifa or somehow connect this to the left wing, we can't. We just don't have the facts. Sorry. Now, an OAN producer from 2019 said this. This is Marissa Gonzalez. She said of how they would handle Donald Trump stories. She said, if there was any story involving Trump, we had only to focus on either the positive information or create positive information. So just create it or lie. I mean, that's what it is, lie. In fact, she said, quote, it was never tell the full truth. Now, she's not the only one, by the way, that has resigned from OAN. In fact, there's been a wave of so-called on-air talent that had left OAN and ran over to Newsmax. And there's, of course, a couple of reasons. For one, Newsmax actually seems to pay better, which is interesting, and treats employees a little bit better, which, again, is surprising to me. But the other thing is, and this is coming from their so-called on-air talent over at Newsmax, OAN is just crazier. Newsmax is less crazy than OAN. And so we just went from there to Newsmax. Crazy. Now, some of the stuff that they did as reporters for OAN, of course, were also very ethically, well, they were just unethical, period. One of them, I should say, the report mentioned that OAN had allowed 2 reporters to literally do fundraisers to help a private audit of the presidential vote in Arizona. Super unethical. Now, for people who worked there, that unethical behavior was not at all surprising. In fact, 5 former OAN producers said in interviews that they found the practice of reporters raising funds for events that they covered unethical, but again said, yeah, we're not surprised. Yeah, that's just kind of how things happen at OAN. Derp. And remember, this is what AT&T specifically asked for and continued to fund. In fact, in his 2019 deposition in the labor suit, the elder Herring said that he created OAN for 2 reasons. Number 1, of course, to make money, which it apparently fails at. But number 2 is that AT&T told us they wanted the conservative network. The lawyer questioning Herring, Rodney Diggs, followed up by asking, so AT&T kind of dictated the kind of network that they wanted? Because there was an opportunity, you jumped at it? Herring replied simply, quote, yes, sir. And as I mentioned, it's a 2-way street. Herring's support of AT&T, according to Reuters, ran deep. And this is from the Herring's lawyers. Herring invited AT&T to utilize OAN's news programs to cast a positive light on the acquisition of DirecTV and advocated for other issues affecting AT&T's business. So now it shouldn't be surprising why AT&T would want to fund a conservative network, or any large corporation, for example. At the end of the day, it's always about profit motive. And we talked about that when it came to Facebook, right? That they let conspiracy theories from the far right go unchallenged across the network and actually also promote them across the platform. And they do it because that gets engagement. Engagement gets people to come back. Engagement gets people to click on ads. And ads make Facebook money. And that's what it is. That's what it's all about. Money. Now, in this case, tax cuts, deregulation, and of course, to avoid being broken up. And that's the other thing. They don't want to be taxed. They don't want to be regulated. And they certainly don't want some left-winger coming into office and breaking them up. And that's it. And again, that would only actually happen if progressives got into power. So much easier and better for them, of course, to build a massively right-wing conspiracy network that panders to anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, insurrectionists, than even face the possibility of losing a dime in profit. That's the motivations here. Those are the motivations. These companies, they have to get broken up. We have to break them up. They're too big. Not just for the sake, of course, competition in the marketplace. That's not even the issue anymore. It's for the good of our nation and democracy that these large corporations, these large media companies especially, but corporations in general, need to get broken up. They are too big to exist and too dangerous to exist as they are. Things have to change immediately. These companies have to get broken up and regulated so that we can actually have a real fair media in this country that does not give rise to disinformation and fascism. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.